Hello everyone. We are beginning the press conference after the meeting of Baltic Council of Ministers in Vilnius. The participants of the conference are the Prime Minister of Lithuania, Ingrida Šimonytė, Estonian Prime Minister Kristen Michal, and Latvian Prime Minister Evika Siliņa. We'll start with the speeches of the Prime Ministers, starting with Lithuanian Prime Minister. Thank you very much. I am delighted to welcome my colleagues Evika and Kristen to Vilnius today for the Baltic Council of Ministers Prime Ministers meeting, which marks the end of Lithuania's presidency of this format. And this is also the 30th anniversary of the Baltic Council of Ministers. And in marking the importance of this 30 years, we have once again demonstrated the importance of this format. I very much appreciate the close dialogue between our countries and our abilities to speak with one voice on the issues that matter most to us. Both when we meet and when we coordinate our positions and actions at all levels, we feel our country's strategic partnership and the genuine communion between our countries. We share the same appreciation of the security situation in our region. That's why we understand the need to continue to fully support Ukraine until victory over bloody Russian imperialism, as well as to strengthen our own security to the utmost. Today's meeting focused on regional security and defense issues, naturally, on support for Ukraine, sanctions against Russia and Belarus, and as always, we talked about the implementation of regional infrastructure projects. Russia's war against Ukraine has been going on for almost 11 years now, and the large-scale aggression has passed the 1,000-day mark. Having failed to draw convincing red lines against one nuclear aggressor, we are now faced with three nuclear powers. With an increasingly united axis of evil that makes no secret of its desire not only to defeat Ukraine, but to break the entire Western world. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are united by understanding that the security of Ukraine, NATO's eastern flank, and Europe depends directly on Ukraine's victory and Euro-Atlantic integration. And that's why we will continue to urge our allies to take more decisive steps. Our support for Ukraine must be strengthened, enabling it not only to survive, but to turn the situation in its favor before entering into any negotiations. We agree that the Baltic countries must remain a model for the EU as a whole in terms of ambitious sanctions, policy proposals, and strong implementations. To further strengthen the implementation of sanctions, today we issued a joint declaration of the three Baltic states premiers committing to adopt a unified list of regionally controlled items relevant in the theater of war in the near future. As Russia prepares for a long-term confrontation with NATO, a coordinated response is essential. It is no longer enough to talk about 2% of GDP for defense. 3% of GDP or even more must become the floor, not a ceiling of alliance members' defense spending. Here the Baltic countries are setting the right example. We are investing in our military forces and developing our military capabilities, therefore strengthening not only our own security but also that of the alliance as a whole. We also need to strengthen the US defense industry, significantly increase its funding, maintain a strong US-European defense relationship, and strengthen the Euro-Atlantic link. Of course, there is still one last formal step to take, but I am sincerely pleased that our representatives in the European Commission, Kaja Kallas and Andrius Kubilius, will be in charge of foreign and defense policy. Together with Valdis Dombrovskis, who is going his third term in the European Commission, I believe that we can achieve a breakthrough through this tandem. We no longer have the luxury of relying on the US to cover all the gaps in European security. To maintain the core role of the US in Europe, we must demonstrate through action Europe's equal contribution to Euro-Atlantic security. Peace through strength must not only be the motto of President Reagan or President Trump, but also the imperative of the EU. Other Baltic Prime Ministers and I agreed that as hybrid aggression and kinetic attacks by unfriendly states intensify around the region, we need to maintain calm, but also remain attentive and vigilant, and ready for a decisive joint response. Last week's cable breaches in the Baltic Sea only confirmed the importance of coordination between the Baltic Sea countries. Lithuania, Sweden, and Finland have launched pre-trial investigations, and, depending on the outcome, the EU and NATO allies must respond appropriately to malicious acts with restrictive measures. It is important to increase the resilience of different sectors to potential threats of a kinetic nature. We are strengthening cooperation between intelligence and security services and the protection of critical infrastructure. We need to do the same at NATO level. Today's meeting also focused on joint infrastructure projects in the region. My colleagues and I are pleased that the agreement on the accelerated synchronization of the Baltic electricity grids with the continental European grids will be implemented on time. Our governments have given us full assurances that we will be permanently disconnected from the Brel ring on 8th of February and that we will be in synchronous operation with the continental European grids on the 9th of February. I want to once again assure you that all the institutions and companies of energy are fully prepared for this synchronization. I have no doubts that with the upcoming synchronization, we might face disinformation attacks. We have to be resilient. We have to trust our institutions. And I assure you once again that the preparation of our institutions that are responsible for synchronization is fully prepared. Deterrence and defense on the eastern flank of NATO and the EU depends heavily on a strong transport infrastructure. Rail Baltica is a cornerstone military mobility project. Together with Via Baltica, they are essential elements to increase the efficiency of the Baltic transport links to Western Europe and to strengthen the critical infrastructure of NATO's eastern flank. That is why we need to work together to secure the necessary funding for the Rail Baltica project. Given the high financing needs, the completion of this project must be one of our priorities in the negotiations on the next EU multi-annual financial framework. Thank you again to the Prime Ministers of Latvia and Estonia, Evika and Kristen, for this meeting and for our unity. We have proven time and again that the Baltic countries are capable of working together and responding effectively to the challenges facing our region. I wish Latvia every success as it takes over the presidency of the Baltic Council Ministers next year. Thank you. We now invite the Estonian Prime Minister.
Sorry. Yeah, we'll manage. Dear Ingrida, thank you for the warm welcome and your good work during Lithuania's presidency of the Baltic Council Ministers. And dear Evika, it is always good to see friends often. Today, as already mentioned, we discussed significant issues to our region, and I will mention 3 topics. First, Ukraine. Tuesday marked the 1,000 days of Russian full-scale war. Contrary to claims of stalemate, there is a hope. We must not allow Russian narratives to mislead us. Sanctions are working. Since the war began, they have cost Russia at least 400 billion in assets and lost revenue, a sum equivalent to years of funding its invasion. Putin's choice to deploy North Korean soldiers signals not only escalation but also a desperation. His so-called 3-day special military operations has dragged into a 3rd year. To end this war, we must stay united, resolute, and intensify pressure on Russia. Missile strikes in response to diplomacy show what we have known before. Such efforts do not bring us closer to the just and lasting peace. Instead, we must give Ukraine more military aid, remove unnecessary restrictions on the use of weapons, and turn our attention to implementing Ukraine's victory plan. It enables Ukraine to take lead and to set the stage for fair peace talks. Strengthening our defense must also remain a top priority. At the CEF 4th summit in Tallinn this December, I will propose increasing defense spending at least 2.5% of GDP, following the example already mentioned and set by our three countries. Second, this week has underscored that protecting our critical infrastructure is also very vital. We are closely monitoring the damage of communication cables between Lithuania, Sweden, and Finland and Germany. To investigate, address, and prevent such incidents, we must work on our partners and allies. The cause is still under investigation, but the broader context calls for vigilance. Russia persists in its hybrid activities against the free world, employing a wide range of tactics, from cyber attacks and migration pressure to election interference and arson. Our response must be unified and resolute. The issue will be also a key focus at CEF Summit in Tallinn. And third, our shared infrastructure projects. Preparing the synchronization and electricity systems with the Central European grid are on track. We have agreed to continue to coordinate closely to complete the sync from the Russian energy system by February 2025. Another important goal for three Baltic countries is to complete the Rail Baltic railway connection between Tallinn and Warsaw to 2030. In Estonia, we just allocated more than 200 million euros to track financing and for rolling stock depot. By the end of the year, more than 70 kilometers of Estonian part of the line will be under development. That's about 1/3 of our line. And new construction contracts are signed all of the time. And the Estonian part of the railway will be ready at 2030 or even a little bit earlier. So cooperation between our countries and the EU long-term budget has always been excellent, and we will continue working together to secure funding for Rail Baltic in the next multi-annual financial framework. The EU is committed to completing this project, and on this year, the Baltic countries received 1.2 billion euros from EU budget for the construction of Rail Baltic. It affects not only the functioning of the internal market, but also security, and must be completed as soon as possible. So, once again, thank you for the hosting and good luck for the future.
Ačiū labai ir taip pat žodis Latvijos ministrai pirmininkiai.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Now, with the word to the Latvian Prime Minister.
I want to thank you for hosting us and for your warm hospitality. And from my part, I want to say that you have been very supportive, always, and a really friendly colleague. And I really have enjoyed working with you together. So I thank you for everything you have done to strengthen all the Baltic region and for promoting Baltics and our bilateral cooperation. So I can assure that we will keep our good work and we will working together as closely as we can. Thank you. So we had a very productive meeting today on the Baltic state prime ministers under the Lithuanian presidency. Our main discussion focus was on regional infrastructure projects, supporting Ukraine and ensuring regional security. On Rail Baltica, as has been said already before by prime ministers, in addition to homework in each of our countries, we agreed to make concrete steps to improve the Baltic cooperation. So the key task of next steps would be to address the main challenges, to come up with coordinated solutions, and to have a joint position in negotiations with the EU institutions, including in the context of the next EU budget. We assessed our progress in disconnecting from Russia's electricity network, and as it has been already said by Ingrida, we are ready for BREL project to go on as planned, and we really see as it very well necessary and very well taken in our society. So we really know that it is really needed steps to be taken to really be more independent from Russia. On Ukraine, we reconfirmed our strong support. We exchanged views on how to best help Ukraine by keeping our focus on Ukraine. On regional security, we appreciated the close cooperation we have already. It's important that we continue coordinating our actions and common response to hybrid threats. We discussed efforts to make our external and internal border security stronger at the Baltic Sea region, at the EU and NATO. We also discussed investments in our military capabilities and improving our resilience. Finally, Latvia will be holding the Baltic Council of Ministers presidency in 2025. And the Latvian priorities, which I presented today, will very much overlap with our today's agenda. And those priorities will be regional security and resilience, support to Ukraine, and regional connectivity, energy security, and promotion of investment. Because as part of the regional security and resilience, I would like to underline the need to have a joint position and action of the Baltic states to promote competitiveness of our country's border regions. Taking care of welfare and security of the people living in our border areas is very important to meet the challenges of Iron Curtain as regards to Russia and Belarus. To conclude, Latvia remains determined to continue close cooperation among the Baltic states. We look forward to hosting our next Baltic State Prime Ministers meeting in Riga in next year. Thank you.
Dėkojame, pereikime prie žiniasklaidos atstovų klausimų.
Thank you very much. Now the time for the questions from press. Please introduce yourself here, say to whom you address the question. Andrews from Reuters, I have a question to all the Prime Ministers. In your opinion, what should be done or done differently to protect critical infrastructure in the bottom of the Baltic Sea? Do we need a different view to achieve that? Also, what currently is the weakest link and why that security is not ensured? If I can, I will start and the colleagues will add. So, since the start of full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022, and even earlier, in fact, I can at least talk for Lithuanian government, a lot of the attention was paid to increasing the security of critical infrastructure in the territory of our country. And as critical infrastructure, we see both the energy infrastructure and transport infrastructure and other areas that are essential to the state functioning. And in that time, we invested a lot into physical protection and measures to protect such objects like Klaipėda oil. So to protect them from various threats from air, sea, and other channels. But we know that international waters are a different story, because the traffic there is quite intensive and various things can happen there. So for now, I don't want to rush the events on the case of this incident specifically, considering that pre-trial investigation is still ongoing in several countries, and the people that are carrying it out will share the information when they see the opportunity for that. But in any case, a cooperation between the states for which this question is relevant, the Baltic states and the northern states, as well as Poland and Germany, should be intensified as much as possible to prevent such incidents as much as possible in the future. And if we see them in the future, because of various reasons, we need to achieve as much as strong cooperation to investigate this accident as possible, because it affects our economies and provision of certain essential services. So we need a clear mechanism of cooperation to ensure that the results are fixed as quickly as possible in such cases, and so that is very important when we're talking about as for the kinetic operations on ground. I'm proud to say that our institutions of all the Baltic states, so the institutions in Lithuania and in Baltic states and in Poland, are very effective in preventing such events or in sniffing out the footprint of such events and minimizing the possible fallout of such events. So international waters are a bit more sensitive issue because you can't put police or officers, security officers, near every cable, underwater cable rather. But all the states have to work together to remove the effects of damage on such cables as quickly as possible.
Yeah, the question is very serious. We talked today about it too, because it's a very important question to economies and also the resilience of societies, that critical infrastructure on the energy security or communications are working. So I would point out a few maybe most critical points. That the first one is the location of different connections, because if it's on mainland, usually it's much more guarded, much easier to repair. It takes 2-3 days, 2-3 weeks, and it will probably be repaired, and after that everything will be okay once again. But underwater cables, underwater pipes are very, very vulnerable to different attacks. Estonia has gas connections between Estonia and Finland, Baltic Connector, which was hit by Chinese ship, and right now it's under the investigation. It was a little bit, time has passed, but investigation is still ongoing, and Finns are leading on it, and they are working with China also on that. But for us, the one like a lesson learned from that came that we had this kind of agreement, more between Estonia and Finland, which I would advise to have between Baltic states too. I talked to Ingrida and Evika about it today. And in the future, we should have this kind of overview that what can any of Baltic states do in certain aspects, because the ability to repair everything which has been damaged is very critical in certain conditions. Let's say winter is coming and you need energy or you need some kind of connection. So that probably would be next step between the Baltic states, to have this kind of overview, what are the capabilities in certain areas, because we have an excellent cooperation between Baltic states in different critical infrastructure areas, but the ability to repair, in our case, between Estonia and Finland, which are very good neighbors, allies, you can see that it takes always some time. And second one is also the topic probably will be talking next week in Sweden with Baltic states, Nordic countries, and in the future also in CEF, that what are the surveillance systems and systems acknowledging what is happening and where, who is moving where, and where is the fault located, because there can be also, let's say, quite natural reasons. We had Estlink 2, which is important power cable between Estonia and Finland, which broke by natural reasons because the cable was fragile. But with the Baltic Connector, the case was another, and you need to find out where is the fault, how to repair it. So these are probably the two topics. And if you ask which is the most critical part, I would say the ability to repair everything which is subsea or underwater. That probably is the toughest part. Thank you.
Yes, I just can agree with all what has been already said before, and this is a moment in our today's lives that we can be stronger if we coordinate our actions, if we act together. So not alone we can succeed in such a threats as we are perceiving, which we are receiving now from Russia. And we have a really good coordination and cooperation in changing our information, coordinating our actions, as well as now in those actions which has been done in the Baltic Sea. We have very well coordinated intelligence, and therefore we can share this information and prepare ourselves better in case of something happens in the nearest future. So I really appreciate Prime Ministers of Estonia proposal to have shared information, what are the capabilities in each of our countries. As we share our gas storage, which are in Latvia, Lithuania provides some terminal, Estonia as well, and we can really well coordinate and support the needs of our society. So I believe as well we can prepare for such a threats, which already happens year by year, and therefore I see this is very important that acting together, sharing our know-hows, we really can benefit each of our countries as such, but as well our Baltic security can benefit. So that's why, yes, we can send some ships, and our ships are monitoring the situation, but for sure there are some new technologies which can be installed on our critical infrastructure, but always there will be challenges because we understand this is not something we can prevent as a sickness, but we know that we can provide better medication for that.
Let's stick with the same topic. All the three prime ministers talked about a stronger cooperation, the need for stronger cooperation. But now the question is whether the NATO response is sufficient in this case. We had a similar accident 1 year ago in the Baltic Sea. And stepping away from that, is it possible legally to have some sort of response? So I will comment briefly. We wouldn't want to attach to a single specific accident because we don't know causes as of yet. And as it was mentioned by Kristen, in some cases the events have natural causes, as with Estlink cable. Even though our natural first reaction is this region is always the same, we will look for some bad will actors, but bad will is not necessary for accidents to happen. So I wouldn't want to refer to a specific case. But even without that specific case, we had cases where we could be assured that they are related with unfriendly states, both in the international waters and on the ground, in Baltic regions and in other states. And I can tell you confidently that this issue is being raised on the NATO format because we have to have a collective response. Otherwise, the price that the initiators of these events will see the cost of those accidents very cheap, because the actors who are apprehended and trialed, they will be paid a good price and they will see the risk as worthwhile. So the cost has to increase so that the other side wouldn't see, it doesn't understand any other response. On the other hand, we haven't come to a complete agreement on how to qualify this. Maybe there are some colleagues or some people who tend to hold some accidents that we think as accident as malicious events. But I think that it is in the interest of the Baltic states to keep pushing this issue forward. This is not only important to the Baltic state region. If we are in the target of these kinetic activities, there are various other kinetic attacks across Europe. And so we have to set a price for these actions, otherwise they will become stronger, not only stop.
those matters in NATO formats, in JEF formats. We will probably discuss as well issues which happened in particular this autumn. So, and what it helps if we raise as well those issues in NATO level, in JEF format, in EU level, so it helps us as well to put forward the next sanctions, because we know that there is a shadow fleet in Baltic Sea, and we will push forward for next sanctions, how we can proceed forward with shadow fleets which are going on in Baltic Sea. Therefore, it's very important that we can raise up in different levels, so those organizations and member states can be informed, because it helps as well to provide them their alertness and the information, and we can proceed with next steps, how we can defend ourselves, and next sanctions and coordinated reactions, how we can deal with those issues and those ships which we don't know whom they belong. It gives us opportunity to find better answers as well for other countries which are not just Baltic states, because we see Scandinavian countries are as well traumatized by those issues. So that's why all the coordinated processes in different levels helps us to make us more resilient.
Yeah, I would add that 16th and 17th December in Tallinn there will be JEF meeting. It will include 10 NATO countries, and we will talk about critical infrastructure also. Probably the topic will be on the table also next week in Sweden with Baltic and Nordic countries meeting. And I would already add, because Evika Ingrida has said the most important, that there are probably two factors, as said, that one is the acknowledging what is happening and where, and it's maybe on more intelligence, maybe on military, naval, and also different system side. And second one is on civilian side, which is ability to repair everything as fast as possible. That keeps the costs low, because with the infrastructure and critical infrastructure, you have to keep in mind that also there can be natural reasons, but not every time. And if there's an attacker must be successful only once, as the defender has to be successful every time. So undersea cables, undersea constructions are very tough to protect, but maybe if we can have this kind of joint declaration or joint overview, what are our capabilities to repair everything faster, and after that we get a bill to a person or whoever is responsible to that, that probably would be a good start. And also, let's say, NATO countries and military and EU-wise probably would good thing to have this kind of surveillance or overview system, that who is moving and where. And also mentioned by the shadow fleet, Evika mentioned this, this is a big problem, to be honest, because there's two problems. One is supplying Russia with money, and second one is an environmental question, because if something would happen with these kind of ships, probably it's a question only about which side the wind blows, because somebody will have environmental problems. So this is an issue we must lean on in European councils and so on, and we are. Thank you.
Dėkojame premjerams, visiems dalyvavusiems.
Thank you to the Prime Ministers and to all the Prime Ministers, and we announce this